Good morning, Aubrey. How's it going?
I'm great, Jess. How are you today?
So good. Did you hear yesterday's episode with Mio?
I haven't yet. I can't wait though. Ooh, I love interviews with students. It's so motivating for you guys to hear somebody else who's in it, hear some sample answers. I love getting student voices on the podcast.
Yes, totally. So, guys, if you did not hear yesterday's episode, I got to interview a real life student, Mio, and we did a sort of mock live speaking test for speaking part 2 and 3. So, definitely listen to that episode, guys, and hear what scores I give her and my personal feedback. It was so fun. Okay. Also, after the episode, after we were done recording, I got to meet her son, who speaks pretty good English, and
Amazing.
Sato. I hope I got his name right if you're listening, because he listens to the podcast with his mom. So shout out to Mio and
Is it
Sato.
on YouTube too? So you can see him and
Yeah,
say some
no,
words?
he's not on the
No?
podcast.
Okay. That
He
makes
just,
sense.
yeah, after we were
Oh,
done
after the
recording,
recording.
he came to
Gotcha.
say
Oh,
hi.
that's
Yeah.
so fun.
Oh,
Love it.
so great. All right. But today, guys, we have a very fun episode. We have some interesting vocabulary, some dark vocabulary, and we're going to make wonderful recommendations for very fun vampire books.
Yes. I love vampire books.
Me
I think
too.
they're so suspenseful usually, right? Authors who write about vampires and the supernatural are really good at building suspense, which makes
Mhm.
them a page turner. It makes them automatically more engaging. So they're great for IELTS reading practice.
They're so great. We had a question from a listener, Yusuf, and he was asking for some more book recommendations. And he had mentioned, I think he said brooding. He mentioned one of these like amazing vocabulary words in his question. And so that is what we're talking about today. And also, guys, remember, like I said yesterday with Mio, when you're learning English, when you're studying for IELTS, if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're learning more. And vampire books are very enjoyable, and they're also like romantic often.
I know, right? A couple of the ones we're talking about today too, that's sort of what focuses the plot or is driving is some kind of romance, right?
Yep.
There's that forbidden love aspect, right? Of a human in
Exactly.
love with a vampire.
Exactly. Oh, it's so fun. Okay, guys, so let's get into the vocab first. There's a couple words that we throw around. Young people use them still. People our ages, let's say we're young adults. We're not young adults, but
I'll take it.
at
I
heart we're
feel
young
like a young
adults.
adult.
We use this vocab. So, two words first: emo and goth. All right. Now, what do these words mean, and how are they different?
Yeah, we use them to describe people. They're adjectives, and is short for emotional. So we often use it to talk about someone who's in their feelings a lot. That's a phrase, that's kind of a new slang phrase we use a lot to mean they're
Yeah.
often really thinking about their emotions. They're not afraid to show emotion, but it really comes across a lot more in the way someone dresses, the music
Mhm.
they listen to. They
Mhm.
sort of fit into this box where they're described as emo.
Yeah. So when we say in their emotions or in their feelings, right? It's usually like sad feelings. It's
Right.
not like
Doesn't mean happy.
yeah, emo people aren't, like super enthusiastic. Emo people are like kind of sad, and there's like I'm picturing like black hair that's like long on one side and like covering half of a face, and listening to like some like tragic rock and roll,
Totally.
stuff like that. So, what is goth then? Because closely related, not the same.
Exactly, right? There were a lot of kids who were goth, quote unquote, in my high school.
Mhm.
And I would characterize it mostly based on how they dressed,
Mhm.
usually dark clothing, but
Yep.
often makeup that would make them stand out as well. Like they would do really white, like foundation, black lipstick, maybe black
Exactly.
fingernails for this goth look.
Exactly.
And it was very much, at least the people I knew who were goth were just trying to stand out, set themselves apart. Maybe they had very strong political beliefs or something, and they were not trying to blend in. They were wanting to make a statement.
Yeah. So goth is short for gothic, right? And we think like the gothic period, gothic stories, like black lace and black gloves, and like you said, like the heavy black eyeliners, black hair, everything black. I was never a goth kid, but I should have been. All right. So let's use these in some example sentences. Of course, we use these to describe people. So Aubrey, what is an example?
Yeah, so you could say, describing a friend. My friend in high school was super emo, always wearing black with cool goth makeup. I was crazy jealous that she was willing to stand out when most of us were trying to fit in. This is accurate, actually. I was so jealous. I'm like, I wish I were more unique like that, and I just wanted to blend in.
I love when our example sentences are like so authentic like that.
Yeah,
And
right.
after we finish saying it, we're like, I just admitted something. That was a real feeling.
Exactly, right? Sometimes they're not, and I'm like, I feel like I need to say this is not true for me. This one
I know.
is. This was
we,
true for me.
but we always do that though. I love us. Okay. All right. Now the next is brooding. So to brood, that's the verb. It means to like really just feel very sad. You're like grieving maybe. Or you're just like a teenager who is just always kind of angry and sad, you know? So to brood is the verb, and then brooding, of course, could be the adjective, the present participle. So, Aubrey, what is an example?
Yeah, so when you're describing a book, maybe for part 2, often you're asked to describe a book. You could say the main character was extremely brooding, and it shared a lot of his internal monologue about the depression and anxiety he was feeling.
That is such a perfect example sentence for that word.
Well, thank you,
Um,
Jessica.
Alternatively, what if you're describing yourself in high school? You know, in part one, you have to talk about high school quite often. That's a common question type. And you could say, when I was 13, I was always brooding. And okay, I wasn't always brooding, but I was often brooding.
Okay. I mean,
But
that's pretty much the standard for
yeah,
teenagers, right? You, like,
yeah,
lock yourself in your room, you're in your feels again, just, like, brooding, thinking maybe you're, anxious or upset, or maybe you're just mad that some friend wasn't kind to you. You have all these new feelings and
right.
emotions, right, as you go through
So much.
puberty, and you're just figuring it out.
Yeah. I have this very clear image. This one time I was cleaning my room. It was Saturday morning and I was cleaning my room. I was like 15 and I was just like angry. I don't know why. I was just not a happy teenager at that morning and I was like cleaning my room and like blah, 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 and I was listening to Rage Against the Machine and it was like super loud and my mom came in and it was this point in the song where like there's like lots of swear words and stuff and my mom was like, "Oh my, are
Wow.
you okay?"
Yes, you just have so much emotion that you
I
want to
know.
let out, whether that's through the music you're listening to or, like, yelling or just brooding in your room, right?
Exactly, exactly. All right, last vocabulary word, and then we're going to give you guys some amazing book and TV and movie recommendations. So, tortured or tortuous. Okay, so these are both adjectives, of course. Tortuous. I love this adjective. I think it's very high level. I don't hear
Yes.
people using it very often. So, of course, like torture is just like, oh, this is like the worst experience ever. It's like physically or mentally like so painful you're just suffering, right? It's torture. So we go to extremes when we use this word because we're not literally talking about torture, right?
Let's hope not. No one
But
wants to be
this is
tortured.
like metaphorical. Okay.
Right.
So stories, experiences, people, we could use these words. All right. What's
And
an
if you think about
yeah.
the options, right, it means the same as very terrible or
Yeah.
horrible. Every student knows those words. This is higher level. I've never heard a student use tortuous, right? So you could say, like, it was a tortuous experience studying for my college entrance exams. And the examiner is going to be like, ding, ding. I'm impressed by that adjective.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. Or like if you're talking about the environment, right? Speaking part 3, writing task 2, we could say like companies behave as if these pollution fines are tortuous when in reality, the amount of money is just a drop in the bucket. So we have that idiom drop in the bucket meaning like almost nothing. Um, and I like that because we hear, like big companies complaining about like taxes and fines and stuff. And when you look at the actual amount, we're like, that's like nothing to you guys.
Actually, that's nothing to you.
All right. So this is the part I was looking most forward to. We have three recommendations for you. The first, and I almost don't want to make this recommendation. Twilight.
Jessica, I can't believe you don't like Twilight. I still stand Twilight. I loved it when the books were written. I thought they were so fun. They were page turners. I think the problem is the movies, especially at first, were low budget and pretty cheesy.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, was it when you were reading? Because I loved the books.
I did not love them. I read them all because one of my friends was in love with it. She kept sending me the books and I had to read them. And I did watch all the movies as well.
So you couldn't have hated it that
I
much.
know.
You
Well,
still
like
watched them.
it's still like tortured love and vampires,
Right.
like these are things that I love. Um, if you guys are interested, I recommend the What Went Wrong podcast. They talk about the production of movies and like the whole
Mm.
process of making films. And the two episodes they did on the Twilight series were fascinating.
Yeah, amazing. I
It,
loved it to the point
yeah.
that I wrote an alternate ending because
Ah!
I discovered the series when the first 2 books had been written, and then it was gonna be, like, a year before the last one came out, and I did not wanna wait a year,
Oh
so I
my
wrote the
god.
ending,
Oh
and
my
then when
god.
her ending, the author Stephanie Meyer, when her ending came out, I was like, mine was better."
Well,
But it was very different. It was shocking how differently she ended it than I ended it, which is interesting to think. You would think that kind of is going one way. Nope. Anything could happen.
I did not like the ending.
I bet
So
you like
I
mine
I
better.
wanna read your ending.
All right.
Something interesting to point out on that podcast, though, is that Stephanie Myers is Mormon, and there are some religious themes that explain some of the plot twists and sort of questions I had about the plot and decisions could be explained by her religious background, which I
Yes,
thought
it's
was a
very
great
true. She
insight.
actually lives not far from here, and she lived really close to me when before I moved.
Whoa, crazy.
And it's true. I'm very familiar with the Mormon faith, and there's a lot of things that happened in the book that like made sense to me because of how I grew up, which potentially wouldn't make sense to a lot of people
Yeah.
depending on how you grow up.
I didn't see these things until I heard that podcast. Guys, if you
Interesting.
hear this back and forth that Aubrey and I are having, this is some high level discussion about books. We are like deep dive into the author and the author's background. We get this by listening to podcasts and reading, guys. If you're going to have great vocab and great ideas, you have to read to prepare for your IELTS exam. So, brings us to the next recommendation, True Blood. True Blood, I love. I read all 15 True Blood books based on the protagonist's. Her name is Sookie Stackhouse, which I love that name.
That
There
is a
was
great
also
name.
7 seasons of a TV show. So Sookie Stackhouse is just a waitress in what is it, Louisiana, and she falls in love with a vampire, but it's not just like a love story. It's very exciting and super silly, and I love the True Blood
I
series.
did watch the TV show. It was
You did? It
fantastic.
was
I feel
so
like I need to
good.
go back and read the books now, right?
So good. The TV series, I watched all of it too. So good. All right. And last but not least, Interview with a Vampire.
This one's a classic, right?
Yeah.
Anne Rice. She writes very well, and these also were made into films, which are fascinating. And just before the episode, Jessica and I were talking about how sometimes these older films don't always stand up to modern times, as far
Hmm.
as like, there's a young girl who's like 12 in it, and is everything that's happening there appropriate? So it's interesting to think about this also. I mean, the vocabulary Anne Rice uses, you're going to be adding quite a bit of
She's a
vocabulary to your
great
notebook. She's
author.
very verbose.
Whereas Stephanie Myers is not a
Not
great
so much.
author.
Yeah, there probably
She
will be new vocab, but Anne Rice is gonna be the vocabulary mine.
like, here's the thing, if you wanna learn how to use the word glittering, um, read Twilight because it's used a million times to
The
to
glitter.
describe Edward. Just that one adjective is like so repetitive. But Anne Rice, yeah, like her, what she is a prolific writer, so many books. And yeah, amazing vocab, like very interesting word choices. But yeah, so classic movie with Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and Kristen Dunst, Interview with a Vampire. And last year, guys, they made the first season of this TV show, Interview with a Vampire, and it really sort of played with some of the gender roles
Mm.
and played up some of the suggestions from the book, I shall say.
Ooh, I
And
haven't seen it yet. I'll have to
oh,
check that out.
it is
Ooh.
amazing. So well done. Highly recommend it.
Awesome. Some great recommendations today, you guys. Thank you, Yusef, for the question. This is how to learn great vocabulary for IELTS. Like Jessica said, if you like what you're reading, if you like the podcasts you're listening to, your brain will be more engaged and you're going to be able to incorporate this vocabulary so that you can use it on test day. Don't
Mhm.
memorize vocabulary lists. Get the vocabulary from what you're reading and listening to.
Exactly, exactly. I hope you guys enjoyed our recommendations. Make sure to hit follow so you never miss an episode. And if you have a question, you can email us support@allearsenglish.com. All right, awesome. Aubrey, thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.